Captain Lee Hyan stood on the bridge of the human ship called Morning Star and watched the massive space station grow larger through the front window. The station was called Harmony Point, and it was supposed to be a place where different alien races could meet safely to talk about important matters. Lee Hyan had been traveling through space for 15 years, but he had never seen anything quite like this enormous structure. The space station looked like a giant metal flower floating in the darkness of space. Its petals were actually docking bays where ships from different worlds could attach themselves safely. Each petal was painted a different color to represent the various alien races that used the station. The center of the flower contained meeting rooms and living areas where diplomats could stay while they worked out their agreements. Ambassador Park Soo walked up behind Lee Hyan and placed his hand on the captain's shoulder. Park Soo was 50 years old and had been working as a diplomat for most of his adult life. He had graying hair and kind eyes that had seen both the best and worst of what intelligent beings could do to each other. Today, those eyes were filled with hope because he truly believed this meeting could end the terrible war that had been destroying human colonies for 3 long years. The war had started when humans first began exploring deeper into the galaxy. The Galactic Coalition, which was made up of 5 different alien races, claimed that humans were too violent and dangerous to be allowed to spread to new worlds. They said humans started too many fights and could not be trusted to live peacefully with other species. At first, the coalition had just told humans to stay in their own small area of space, but humans needed new worlds to live on because Earth was becoming too crowded. The population had grown to over 8 billion people, and they needed more planets where families could build new homes and start new lives. Human ships began exploring systems that the coalition claimed belonged to them. This made the alien races very angry, and they decided to use their military forces to push humans back to Earth. For 3 years, human colonies had been attacked by coalition forces. The aliens had better technology and more ships than humans did. They could travel faster through space, and their weapons were more powerful. Many human settlements had been destroyed, and hundreds of thousands of people had died. The few colonies that survived were constantly under threat of attack. Park Soo carried with him humanity's final offer for peace. It was written on special paper and sealed with Earth's official mark. The document promised that humans would give up 12 of their outer colonies in exchange for a permanent peace treaty. These colonies contained millions of people who would have to abandon their homes and return to more crowded worlds closer to Earth. It was a terrible sacrifice, but Park Soo believed it was better than continuing a war that humanity could not win. The Morning Star docked at one of the station's blue petals, which was designated for human ships. Lee Hyan watched as his crew prepared to escort the ambassador to the meeting rooms. He had brought his best security team led by Sergeant Kim Tae, who was known throughout the human fleet for his sharp instincts and careful attention to detail. As they walked through the station's corridors, Park Soo marveled at how different alien races had decorated their sections. The Talon Empire's area was filled with sharp metal sculptures that looked like abstract birds in flight. The Hive Collective section buzzed with a low humming sound, and the walls seemed to move slightly as if they were alive. The Crystal Federation's area sparkled with rainbow-colored lights that hurt human eyes if you looked at them too long. The main meeting room was enormous, with a circular table that could seat representatives from all the different races. A huge window showed the stars beyond and reminded everyone that they were just tiny beings floating in an infinite universe. The room was designed to make everyone feel equal and important regardless of what planet they came from. The alien representatives were already waiting when Park Soo arrived. The Talon Empire sent Commander Velkarus, who looked like a giant bird with metallic feathers and sharp claws instead of hands. His people were proud warriors who believed that strength was the most important quality any being could possess. The Hive Collective was represented by Speaker Ron Zik, who appeared to be part insect and part machine. His species shared a group mind, which meant they could all think together as one. The Crystal Federation sent Ambassador Lux Nara, whose body seemed to be made of living gemstones that changed color depending on her emotions. The rock crawlers were represented by General Thudmek, whose people looked like walking boulders with arms and legs. The Silicon Lords sent Coordinator Prex Volume, whose silver skin reflected light like a mirror park. Su took his seat at the table and carefully placed the peace proposal in front of him. He had practiced his speech many times during the long journey to Harmony Point. He knew exactly what he wanted to say and how he wanted to say it. The future of humanity depended on his ability to convince these alien leaders that humans could be trusted to live peacefully in the galaxy. The first day of meetings went better than Park Su had dared to hope. The alien representatives listened carefully to his proposals and asked detailed questions about human intentions. They wanted to know exactly which colonies humans would give up and how quickly the evacuations could be completed. They asked about human military capabilities and how many ships Earth's government-controlled Commander Vel Karus seemed particularly interested in human technology. He asked many questions about how human ships were built and what kinds of weapons they carried. Speaker Ronzik wanted to know about human population numbers and how fast humanity was growing. Ambassador Lux Nera asked about human culture and whether humans could learn to follow galactic laws. Park Su answered every question honestly and completely. He showed them detailed maps of human territory and explained exactly how the proposed treaty would work. He even offered to allow coalition inspectors to visit human worlds to make sure the agreements were being followed. Everything seemed to be going exactly as he had hoped, but Captain Lee Hyun was starting to feel worried about things he could not quite explain during breaks in the meetings. He walked around the station with Sergeant Kim Tae and noticed things that did not seem right. There were more alien soldiers than usual stationed at important locations. Throughout Harmony Point, the aliens seemed to be positioning themselves at places where they could control access to different sections of the station. When Lee Hyun tried to contact Earth Command to report on the progress of the negotiations, he discovered that all communication channels had been blocked. The station's administrators claimed this was normal security procedure during important diplomatic meetings, but Lee Hyun had been to many such meetings before and communications had never been restricted like this. Sergeant Kim Tae reported that alien patrols had been asking detailed questions about the human delegation's schedule. They wanted to know when the humans slept, when they ate meals, and when they planned to return to their ship. These questions seemed strange because the aliens had never shown such interest in human daily routines during previous meetings. On the second day of negotiations, the alien representatives requested a 3-day recess to discuss the human proposals among themselves. This was not unusual because important decisions often required careful consideration by government leaders back on the alien homeworld's Park. Su agreed to wait and use the time to review his proposals and prepare for additional questions, but something had changed in the way the aliens looked at him. During the first day, they had seemed genuinely interested in finding a peaceful solution. Now they avoided making eye contact, and their questions had become sharp and accusatory. They began asking about human military secrets and the locations of hidden bases rather than focusing on the peace treaty. Lee Hyun decided to investigate what was happening. He and Kim Tae carefully explored different sections of the station and discovered that coalition forces had been moving heavy weapons and additional troops into position. The aliens were not preparing for more negotiations. They were preparing for something much more dangerous. Late that night, Park Su was working in his quarters reviewing documents when he heard strange sounds. In the corridor outside, his door was suddenly thrown open and alien soldiers rushed into the room. They grabbed him roughly and dragged him from his bed without explanation. Similar raids were happening throughout the human section of the station. The aliens had never intended to negotiate a peace treaty. They had used the meeting as a trap to capture humanity's most important diplomats. The peace proposal that Park Su had worked so hard to create was torn up and scattered across the floor like worthless garbage. The hope that had filled his heart for the past 2 days was replaced by the terrible understanding that he had led his entire team into a carefully planned ambush as coalition soldiers dragged the human diplomats through the station's corridors toward an unknown fate. Park Su realized that this betrayal would have consequences that none of the alien races could possibly imagine. They thought they were eliminating human leadership and breaking humanity's will to resist, but they were actually about to awaken something far more dangerous than they could understand. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The emergency alarm echoed through the halls of Earth Command Center as President Choi Min ran toward the communication room. Her heart was pounding because she knew that alarms only sounded when something terrible had happened. The message from Harmony Point had arrived just minutes ago, and she could barely believe what she was reading in the main communication center. Dozens of military officers and government officials were gathered around the massive viewing screen the image showed. Ambassador Park Soo and his entire diplomatic team standing on a platform in the center of Harmony Point Station. Their hands were tied behind their backs and alien soldiers surrounded them on all sides. President Choi Min had known Park Soo for over 20 years. They had worked together when she was just a junior senator and he was starting his career as a diplomat. She had watched him negotiate countless agreements and solve problems that seemed impossible to fix. He was one of the most peaceful men she had ever known, and seeing him treated like a criminal filled her with a rage she had never felt before. General Song-woo stood beside the president with his arms crossed over his chest. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes burned with cold fury. Song-woo had been fighting the coalition for 3 years and had lost many good soldiers in battles. Across human space, he had always followed the rules of war and treated alien prisoners with dignity and respect. Now he watched as the aliens showed no such honor to human diplomats. The coalition commander appeared on the screen and began speaking in the common galactic language. His words were being translated by the station computer and displayed as text at the bottom of the image. He declared that the human diplomats were guilty of war crimes and would be executed as an example to all humanity. He said that humans had one final choice: complete surrender within 7 days or total destruction of all human colonies. Kang Yu entered the room carrying a heavy metal briefcase that required 2 security codes to open. She was the director of Earth Defense Research and had been working on secret projects for the past 10 years. The briefcase contained plans and documents that only 5 people on Earth were authorized to know about. These were weapons and technologies that had been developed in case humanity ever faced complete extinction. President Choi Min watched in horror as the alien executioner placed a rope around Ambassador Park Soo's neck. The diplomat's final words were broadcast across the galaxy as he looked directly into the camera and said that humanity would never surrender to tyranny and that his death would not be forgotten. The president felt something break inside her heart as she watched the rope tighten and her friend's life in the executions continued for 30 minutes as each member of the diplomatic team was killed in the same brutal manner. The aliens made sure to show every detail and broadcast the images to every human colony in space. They wanted to break humanity's spirit and force them to give up. Without a fight, they believed that seeing their greatest peacemaker murdered would convince humans that resistance was hopeless, but they had badly misjudged human nature. The execution of Park Soo and his team did not break humanity's will to fight. Instead, it awakened something that had been sleeping deep in the human soul for thousands of years. Humans had been capable of terrible violence when pushed beyond their limits. The aliens had just pushed humanity far beyond that point. President Choi Min turned away from the screen and faced the room full of military leaders and government officials. Her voice was steady and cold as she spoke. She declared that the time for mercy and negotiation was over. Humanity had tried to find a peaceful solution to the conflict, but the aliens had chosen to answer diplomacy with murder. Now there would be only one response: total war until the coalition was completely destroyed. General Song-woo stepped forward and asked for authorization to activate Protocol Zero. This was humanity's most secret military plan, designed for use only when the survival of the species was at stake. Protocol Zero removed all restrictions on weapons development and military tactics. It allowed commanders to use any means necessary to achieve victory, regardless of the cost to enemy populations. Dr. Kang Yu opened her briefcase and spread classified documents across the conference table. These papers contained designs for weapons that had been considered too dangerous to build, technologies that could destroy entire star systems, biological agents that could wipe out alien species, psychological warfare tools that could drive enemy populations insane. The scientists had created these horrors hoping they would never be needed. The president signed the authorization papers with a trembling hand. She knew that activating Protocol Zero would change humanity forever. Once these weapons were unleashed, there would be no going back. The galaxy would see a side of human nature that they had never imagined existed, but the aliens had made their choice when they murdered innocent diplomats within hours. The orders went out to every human colony and military base in space. All rules of engagement were suspended. All ethical limitations on weapons research were removed. Every human ship captain received the same message: find coalition forces and destroy them completely. No prisoners were to be taken. No mercy was to be shown. No quarter was to be given. Admiral Yun Jin received his orders aboard the battleship Vengeance his fleet had been defending human colonies for 3 years, trying to minimize civilian casualties and follow the rules of civilized warfare. Now his mission was simple: hunt down every coalition ship in space and eliminate them. His weapons officers began loading ammunition that they had been forbidden to use until this moment. Commander Park Jin was ordered to activate the Ghost Ship program. This was a top-secret project that had been in development for 5 years. The Ghost ships used experimental technology that allowed them to phase in and out of normal space, making them invisible to enemy sensors and immune to most weapons. Only 12 of these ships had been built, but they were about to change the nature of space warfare forever. The transformation of human society was swift and complete. Factories that had been producing consumer goods switched to manufacturing military equipment overnight. Scientists who had been researching medical treatments began developing biological weapons. Civilian transport ships were converted into military vessels capable of carrying troops and supplies to distant battlefields. Even children in schools were taught new lessons about warfare and survival. Every human being in the galaxy understood that their species was now fighting for its very existence. The execution of Ambassador Park Soo had united humanity in a way that nothing else could have achieved. They were no longer just citizens of different colonies. They were all soldiers in the same war. The aliens had expected their brutal display to terrorize humanity into submission. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant that would not rest until every member of the coalition paid for their crimes. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were truly capable of when their diplomats were murdered and their offers of peace were answered with violence. The Liana activated her biological warfare laboratory and began working on viruses specifically designed to target alien DNA. Her team had been studying coalition prisoners for years, learning about their weaknesses and developing weapons that could exploit them. These diseases would spread through alien populations like wildfire, leaving death and chaos in their wake. The message was clear to every human in space: the time for playing by the rules was over. The aliens wanted a war without mercy, and that was exactly what they were going to get. Humanity had tried to be civilized neighbors in the galaxy, but when their peaceful envoys were murdered like criminals, they showed their true nature as the most dangerous predators the universe had ever seen. The stars themselves seemed to grow darker as humanity prepared to unleash weapons that would reshape the galaxy forever. The Coalition had made the worst mistake in galactic history, and they were about to pay a price that would echo through the ages. Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, a massive elevator descended 3 kilometers into the earth, carrying Commander Park Jin toward secrets that most humans never knew existed. The facility had been built over 50 years ago when humanity first made contact with alien civilizations. Earth's leaders had learned early that the galaxy was a dangerous place, and they had spent decades preparing for the day when diplomacy would fail. The underground complex was larger than most cities, with laboratories and factories stretching for kilometers in every direction. Thousands of scientists and engineers had been working here for decades, developing technologies that combined human innovation with alien science recovered from crashed ships and captured equipment. The project had cost trillions of dollars and represented humanity's greatest scientific achievement. Park Jin walked through corridors lined with experimental spacecraft that looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The ghost ships were humanity's most closely guarded secret vessels that could phase between dimensions and appear anywhere in space without warning. Their hulls were made from materials that did not exist in normal physics, and their engines could travel faster than anything the Coalition possessed. Dr. Kim Soo was waiting for Park Jin in the main hangar, where 12 ghost ships floated silently above the floor. Each ship was painted black and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect If they were beautiful and terrifying at the same time, like deadly works of art that had been designed by beings from another universe, the technology that powered them had been developed by studying alien artifacts for 30 years. The first Ghost ship had been built in secret after human scientists discovered how to manipulate space itself. They learned that reality was not solid but could be bent and twisted by beings who understood the underlying mathematics the aliens had never developed. This technology, because they thought it was impossible, human scientists had proven them wrong. Park Jin climbed into the cockpit of the lead Ghost ship and felt the vessel respond to his thoughts. The control system was connected directly to his nervous system, allowing him to fly the ship as if it were an extension of his own body. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced before. He could feel the boundaries between dimensions and sense the location of every object within. 1,000 light-years, his squadron of 12 ghost ships launched from hidden bases scattered across human space. Each ship was crewed by pilots who had trained for years to handle technology that operated beyond the normal laws of physics. They could appear behind enemy fleets without warning, strike with weapons that ignored energy shields, and vanish before return fire could reach them. The first target was Kepler Station, a major coalition supply hub that supported military operations. Across 3 star systems, the station was defended by 50 of the coalition's most advanced warships, including the flagship of the Talon, Empire's Third Fleet. The aliens were confident that their superior numbers and technology made them invincible against any human attack. Commander Velkarus stood on the bridge of his flagship watching routine patrol reports when his sensors detected something impossible. 12 unknown contacts had appeared directly behind his fleet without triggering any early warning systems. His tactical officer reported that the contacts were moving in perfect formation, but their energy signatures made no sense. The ghost ships struck without warning, phasing into normal space just long enough to fire their weapons before disappearing again. Their guns used concentrated antimatter that could punch through any known shield technology, and their targeting systems were guided by artificial intelligence that never missed. Each shot was precisely calculated to cause maximum damage to enemy vessels. Park Jin watched through his ship computer as coalition vessels exploded one after another. The alien commanders tried to return fire, but their weapons passed harmlessly through empty space where the ghost ships had been. Moments before the battle was completely one-sided as human vessels struck again and again while remaining completely immune to counterattack. Within 30 minutes, the entire coalition fleet was destroyed and Kepler Station was reduced to burning wreckage floating in space. Not a single ghost ship had taken any damage or even been detected by enemy sensors. The alien survivors sent desperate messages to Coalition Command reporting that they had been attacked by invisible demons that could appear and disappear at will. Similar attacks were happening across Coalition space as humanity's hidden weapons were revealed for the first time. Dr. Liana's biological weapons spread through alien populations like a plague that adapted faster than any medical treatment could be developed. The viruses attacked alien DNA, directly causing their bodies to break down at the cellular level. Coalition's computer networks were infiltrated by artificial intelligence programs that had been designed specifically to counter alien technology. Human hackers had spent decades studying Coalition systems and developing viruses that could turn enemy equipment against itself. Entire fleets found their own weapons firing on friendly vessels as human programs took control of their targeting computers. But perhaps the most shocking revelation was humanity's true military strength. The Coalition had believed they were fighting against 3 billion humans living on a few dozen worlds scattered around Earth. The truth was far more terrifying. Human colonies existed in hidden star systems that had been kept secret for generations. Admiral Yunjin commanded a fleet of over 5,000 ships that emerged from concealed bases inside asteroids and gas giant atmospheres. Human industrial complexes had been built in systems that appeared empty to alien sensors. Using stealth technology that made entire planets invisible, the Coalition discovered they were not fighting 3 billion humans, but over 50 billion. The hidden colonies had been preparing for this war for decades. Mass production facilities built weapons and ships faster than the Coalition could destroy them. Entire generations of humans had been raised and trained in secret, becoming soldiers who knew nothing but warfare. Their only purpose in life was to defend humanity against alien threats. General Song Woo revealed that human military doctrine had been based on deception from the very beginning. Every battle the coalition thought they had won had actually been a carefully planned retreat. Human forces had been gathering intelligence about alien tactics and technology while appearing to lose ground. The apparent weakness had been a trap that was now closing around the entire coalition. Captain Ruesio led special operations teams that had been infiltrating coalition space for years. These soldiers could pass for members of different alien species using advanced disguise technology and surgical modification. They had been mapping coalition defenses and identifying key targets while living among the enemy population. The Psychological Warfare Division had been studying alien minds for decades, learning exactly what would terrorize each species. Human operatives could induce madness in entire enemy crews using sounds and images that exploited alien neurological weaknesses. The coalition forces began reporting that their own soldiers were going insane for no apparent reason. Coalition intelligence tried desperately to understand how humanity had developed such advanced technology. Their scientists had always believed that humans were primitive beings who had stumbled into space by accident. The reality was that human researchers had been combining the knowledge of dozens of alien civilizations while adding innovations that no other species had ever imagined. The ghost ships were just the beginning of humanity's secret arsenal. Phase cannons could destroy targets in other dimensions. Gravity bombs could collapse entire star systems. Time dilation weapons could trap enemy fleets in temporal loops where they would fight the same battle forever. Humanity had been preparing for total war while pretending to seek peace. Dr. Kang Yu authorized the deployment of planet-killer weapons that had been built but never tested. These devices could destabilize the core of any world, causing it to explode with the force of a small star. The technology was based on alien physics, but pushed far beyond what any coalition species thought possible. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities sent shockwaves through coalition space. Alien governments that had been confident of victory suddenly realized they were facing an enemy that had been planning their destruction for generations. The humans had not been running away from superior alien forces. They had been leading them into a carefully prepared trap. Every coalition victory had been allowed to happen as part of a larger strategy. Every human retreat had been designed to make the aliens overconfident and careless. Now the trap was sprung, and the coalition found themselves facing an enemy that was not only more numerous than they had believed, but also far more technologically advanced. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology or their numbers. It was their ability to appear weak while growing strong, to seem defeated while planning victory. The coalition had thought they were hunting prey, but they had actually been stalked by the most dangerous predators in the universe. Fleet Admiral Wante stood in the command center of the massive battleship called Human Fury and watched as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Every coalition stronghold that had once seemed invincible was falling to human forces with terrifying speed. The aliens who had ruled space for over 1,000 years were discovering that their empire was built on foundations of sand operation. Broken Chain had been designed to systematically destroy every coalition military base in a carefully planned sequence. Each attack was timed to create maximum chaos and prevent alien forces from coordinating their defense. The operation used intelligence that human spies had been gathering for decades, combined with new weapons that made traditional space warfare obsolete. The first phase targeted coalition communication networks across 50 star systems. Human hackers infiltrated alien command centers and planted viruses that would activate, simultaneously causing complete breakdown of military coordination. When coalition admirals tried to contact their fleets, they found only static and silence. Their entire command structure collapsed in a matter of hours. Wante personally commanded the assault on Rigel Base, which had been the coalition's primary military academy for 3 centuries. The base was protected by energy shields that could withstand direct hits from supernova explosions and was defended by over 200 of the coalition's most advanced warships. The aliens believed it was absolutely impossible to capture, but humans had learned to think in ways that aliens could not comprehend. Instead of attacking the base directly, human engineers used gravitational weapons to alter the orbit of the systems. Largest moon, the moon was slowly pulled toward the planet where Rigel base was located, creating tidal forces that tore the base apart from. Within, the coalition defenders watched helplessly as their impregnable fortress was destroyed by natural forces that they could not fight against. The base's shields were designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles, but they could not protect against the planet itself breaking apart. Human forces simply waited until the destruction was complete, then moved in to capture any survivors. The Talon Empire was the first coalition member to attempt separate negotiations. Their proud warrior culture had been built on the belief that honorable combat could solve any problem, but there was nothing honorable about the way humans fought. They struck without warning, used weapons that ignored all known defenses, and showed no mercy to defeated enemies. Emperor Veltharus sent desperate messages to Earth Command offering to surrender his entire empire in exchange for the survival of his species, but humanity was no longer interested in negotiating with any member of the coalition. President Choi Min's response was delivered by a ghost ship that materialized in the throne room of the Imperial Palace. The human message was simple and direct. The same mercy you showed our diplomats. The Emperor watched in horror as human soldiers placed a rope around his neck and broadcast his execution across Talon space. Within days, the entire Talon Empire had collapsed as local governors surrendered to human forces rather than face the same fate as their ruler. The Hive Collective tried to use their greatest advantage, which was their ability to coordinate millions of ships through their shared consciousness. But human scientists had developed weapons specifically designed to attack hive minds. Computer viruses were injected into the collective's neural network, causing their shared thoughts to become chaotic and self-destructive. Speaker Ron Zick felt his mind being torn apart as human programs corrupted the collective consciousness. Millions of hive drones suddenly found themselves cut off from the guiding intelligence that had controlled their actions for their entire lives. Some went insane from the isolation, while others began attacking their own kind as the virus made them see enemies everywhere. Liana had created the perfect weapon against a species that thought as one. The biological agent spread through the hive's neural connections faster than any antidote could be developed. Each infected drone became a carrier that spread the madness to others, until entire fleets were firing on themselves in mindless fury. The Crystal Federation attempted to hide in the energy fields surrounding their homeworld star. Their crystalline bodies could survive in environments that would instantly kill other life forms, and they believed this would protect them from human weapons. But humans had been studying stellar physics for centuries and knew how to turn stars into weapons. Captain Li Jin commanded a squadron of ships equipped with stellar manipulation devices that could alter the nuclear reactions inside stars. The Crystal Federation watched in terror as their sun began to change color and emit radiation that was deadly even to their crystalline forms. Their perfect hiding place became a death trap from which there was no escape. The rock crawlers tried to retreat to asteroid fields where their stone like bodies allowed them to hide among the rocks, but human sensors could detect the unique magnetic signatures of living beings. Regardless of how well they camouflaged themselves, phase cannons could strike targets hiding inside solid rock by firing through dimensional barriers. General Thud Mech Lead the final defense of his people's hidden fortress built inside a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out over centuries. The rock crawlers believed that human weapons could not penetrate their stone defenses, but humanity had developed mining equipment that could disintegrate any known material at the molecular level. The Silicon Lords were the last to fall because their artificial intelligence allowed them to adapt their tactics faster than biological species could think. But humans had created artificial intelligences of their own that could process information at speeds that made Silicon Lord computers seem primitive. The AI war lasted only 3 hours before the Silicon Lord surrendered. Coordinator Prex Volume transmitted his surrender directly to human command centers, offering to serve humanity in exchange for the preservation of his people's digital consciousness. But humans had learned not to trust any member of the coalition. The Silicon Lords were given the same mercy they had shown to human diplomats. The Assault on Coalition Central Command was led by General Kim, whose hatred of the aliens burned brighter than the stars themselves. The massive space station had been built to coordinate military operations across the entire galaxy and was protected by defenses that had never been tested in actual combat. The station's energy shields could deflect the firepower of entire fleets, and its weapons could destroy planets from distances of several light years. But humans attacked from directions that the aliens had never considered possible. Ghost ships materialized inside the station's shields and began destroying critical systems. From within, the battle lasted only 6 hours because human forces had been studying the station's blueprints for years. Through their spy networks, every weakness had been identified and every defense had been countered before the attack even began. Coalition Central Command fell with devastating speed, leaving the alien leadership trapped inside. A burning Tenant Marvel Karus made his final stand in the station's command center, surrounded by the burning wreckage of his empire. He had been one of the commanders who voted to execute the human diplomats, and now he faced the same fate. The human soldiers who captured him showed the same mercy that he had shown to Ambassador Park Soo. The psychological effect of these victories was devastating. To coalition morale, alien forces across the galaxy began surrendering without a fight, hoping that cooperation might save their lives. But humans had learned to distrust alien promises and treated surrender attempts as another form of deception. Some coalition ships attempted to flee to the outer rim of the galaxy, where they hoped to hide until the war ended. But human scouts had been mapping those regions for decades, and there was nowhere in known space where alien refugees could escape human vengeance. Every hidden base and secret colony was marked for destruction. The speed of the coalition's collapse shocked even human military leaders who had planned the campaign. General Song Wu had expected the war to last for years, but the enemy resistance crumbled within months. The aliens had been so dependent on their technological superiority that they had no backup plans for facing an enemy with better weapons. Each coalition defeat made the next victory easier as alien morale collapsed completely. Many alien soldiers chose to take their own lives rather than face capture by human forces. Stories spread through coalition space about the terrible fate that awaited anyone who fell into human hands. The galaxy watched in amazement as the mighty coalition that had dominated space for over a millennium was reduced to scattered refugees fleeing through the outer darkness. Human forces pursued them, relentlessly, showing the same mercy that had been shown to their peaceful diplomats. Execution of Ambassador Park Soo had been intended to break human spirit and force humanity to surrender. Instead, it had awakened a sleeping giant that would not rest until every member of the coalition had paid for their crimes. The aliens had sown the wind, and now they were reaping the whirlwind. The final phase of humanity's war of vengeance began with the systematic conquest of every world that had participated in the execution of Ambassador Park Soo. This was no longer about military victory or territorial control. This was about justice and ensuring that every being in the galaxy understood the price of harming human diplomats. Colonel Baek Yeon commanded the siege of Talon Prime, the homeworld of the bird-like aliens who had voted to hang the human peace delegation. The planet was protected by orbital defense platforms that had been built over 3 centuries and were considered the most advanced fortifications in known space. Each platform could destroy entire fleets, and they were positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that made approach impossible. But human engineers had studied the defense network for months, using intelligence gathered by deep cover agents who had lived among the Talon population for years. They discovered that the platforms were powered by a central energy core located deep beneath the planet's surface. If that core could be destroyed, the entire defense network would collapse. Captain Oh Min led a team of Special Forces soldiers on a mission that required them to infiltrate the planet's surface while the orbital battle raged overhead. They used personal stealth technology that made them invisible to Talon sensors and moved through the planet's underground tunnel system like ghosts seeking their target. The Talon defenders had never imagined that enemy forces could reach their planet's surface while the orbital defenses were still active. They discovered too late that humans could fight battles on multiple levels simultaneously, using tactics that no other species had ever developed, the Defense Corps was destroyed by a single small explosive device that caused catastrophic system failure with their orbital defenses offline. Talon Prime was defenseless against the human fleet that had been waiting in the outer system. Colonel Bekian ordered his ships to target specific government buildings where the leaders who had voted for the executions were known to be hiding. The bombardment was precise and surgical, designed to capture rather than kill. The trials of Talon war criminals were broadcast across the galaxy so that every intelligent being could see what happened to those who murdered human diplomats. Each defendant was given the same legal representation that Ambassador Park Sue had received. Before his execution, the verdicts were predetermined and the sentences were carried out immediately. Emperor Veltharis was the first to face human justice. He was forced to stand on the same type of platform where Park Sue had died and wear the same type of rope around his neck. The human judge read the charges in the common galactic language so that everyone could understand exactly why he was being executed. The Hive Queen herself attempted to negotiate for the survival of her species by offering to surrender her entire collective consciousness to human control. Major Young Hai delivered humanity's response in person. The same mercy you showed our diplomats. The Queen's execution was broadcast to every Hive world simultaneously, causing complete collapse of their social order, but the most devastating attack was reserved for Coalition Prime, the capital world where the original orders for the executions had been issued. Admiral Nam Ki assembled the largest fleet in human history for the final assault. Over 5,000 ships gathered in the outer system, while smaller vessels prepared for the ground invasion. The planet's population watched in terror as human vessels filled the sky, blocking out the light of their sun. The sight was deliberately calculated to create maximum psychological impact. Just as the Coalition had tried to break human spirits through the televised executions, humans were now demonstrating their absolute dominance over the galaxy. But humans were not interested in simply destroying the planet from orbit. They wanted the Coalition leadership to face justice personally for their crimes against humanity. Ground forces landed at strategic locations around the capital city, while orbital bombardment cleared paths through the defenders. Captain Ruesio led urban warfare specialists through the streets of the capital, hunting for specific individuals whose names appeared on humanity's justice list. These were the officials who had planned the executions, the commanders who had carried them out, and the politicians who had approved the orders. Every person responsible for Ambassador Park Sue's death was marked for capture. The trials were held in the same building where the Coalition had voted to execute human diplomats. The irony was intentional and designed to show that human justice, while harsh, was at least more fair than alien mercy. The defendants were given opportunities to speak in their own defense, although their guilt had already been established by evidence. Coalition Prime's government building became a courthouse, where alien war criminals faced human judges who had studied galactic law for decades. The proceedings were translated into every known language and broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The message was clear and unmistakable. Each execution was carried out using the same method that had been used on the human diplomats. The hangings were performed with precise timing to maximize the psychological impact on watching alien populations. Human officials explained that this was not cruelty but justice. The aliens were receiving exactly the same treatment they had given to peaceful ambassadors. The few remaining Coalition worlds received ultimatums that were identical to the one humanity had once been given: complete surrender within 7 days or total destruction of their civilizations. But unlike the aliens, humans kept their promises. Those who surrendered immediately were allowed to live under human protection and supervision. Who chose to resist discovered that human patience had been exhausted by 3 years of war and the murder of their diplomats. Entire star systems were sterilized using weapons that left planets uninhabitable for thousands of years. The message was clear throughout the galaxy that defying humanity led to extinction. Dr. Kong Yu authorized the use of weapons that had been considered too terrible to deploy even during the darkest days of the war. Planet killers were used against worlds that refused to surrender. The technology destabilized planetary cores, causing them to explode with the force of small stars. The Psychological Warfare Division created propaganda broadcasts that were transmitted to every surviving alien population. The messages showed the trials and executions of coalition leaders while explaining that this was the price of murdering human diplomats. Any species that harmed Earth's representatives could expect the same fate. General Song-woo established military tribunals on captured worlds to try local officials who had participated in anti-human activities. The trials were conducted according to human military law, which was harsh but consistent. Aliens who had committed crimes against humanity faced execution, while those who had simply followed orders were sentenced to prison. The speed and efficiency of human justice shocked the galaxy. Alien populations had expected lengthy legal proceedings and appeals processes. Instead, they discovered that humans had already investigated every crime and identified every perpetrator. The trials were formalities designed to demonstrate that humanity followed rules even when seeking vengeance. Captain Lee Jin commanded punishment fleets that visited worlds where human colonies had been destroyed during the 3-year war. These planets were not conquered but were instead turned into monuments to coalition cruelty. The populations were relocated, and the worlds were left as barren reminders of what happened to those who attacked innocent humans. The executions continued for months as human forces worked through their lists of war criminals. Every coalition official who had voted for the diplomat executions, every military commander who had attacked human civilians, and every propagandist who had encouraged hatred against humanity faced the same fate they had inflicted on others. The galaxy learned that human justice was not motivated by hatred or revenge, but by a cold determination to ensure that such crimes would never be committed again. The executions were not acts of passion, but calculated demonstrations of power, designed to establish humanity's dominance over all other species. As the last coalition war criminal was executed on the ruins of their former capital, humanity stood supreme over a galaxy that had learned to fear and respect their power. The aliens had thought they could break human spirits by murdering peaceful diplomats. Instead, they had awakened the most dangerous predators the universe had ever known. The execution of Ambassador Park Soo had been intended as a symbol of alien dominance over humanity. Instead, it became the spark that ignited a fire that consumed the greatest empire in galactic history. The aliens had received exactly the same mercy they had shown to human diplomats, none at all. 5 years after the hanging of Ambassador Park Soo, the galaxy had been transformed into something that would have been unrecognizable to the beings who had once ruled it. The Galactic Coalition existed only in history books as a cautionary tale about what happened when peaceful species were pushed too far. The Terran hegemony now controlled over half of known space, and that territory grew larger every month. President Choi Min stood in her office high above New Geneva, looking out at a city that had become the capital of the largest empire in galactic history. The building where she worked had been constructed from materials taken from the ruins of Coalition Central Command as a reminder that human dominance had been built on the ashes of those who had underestimated them. The transformation of human society had been as dramatic as their military conquest. Earth itself had become a fortress world protected by defenses that made the old Coalition strongholds look primitive. Orbital platforms surrounded the planet like a metal shell, while hidden bases throughout the solar system housed weapons capable of destroying entire star fleets. But humanity had not become the monsters that their enemies claimed they were. The new galactic order was built on principles of justice and protection for those who chose to live peacefully under human rule. Alien species that surrendered quickly and showed genuine cooperation were treated fairly and allowed to maintain their cultures and traditions. Ambassador Kim Yoon walked through the halls of New Harmony Station, which had been built on the exact location where the original station had been destroyed. The new facility was 10 times larger than its predecessor and served as the diplomatic center for the entire galaxy. Representatives from hundreds of worlds came here to request trade agreements and military protection from humanity. The memorial to Ambassador Park Soo and his diplomatic team occupied the central plaza of the station, where millions of visitors could pay their respects to the humans whose deaths had changed the course of galactic history. The memorial was made from black stone taken from Coalition Prime and was inscribed with the names of every human who had died in the 3-year war. Kim Yoon had been Park Su's deputy and had survived only because he had been on Earth when the executions took place. Now he served as humanity's chief diplomat, meeting with alien representatives who came to him with offerings rather than demands. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted completely and permanently. General Song Wo had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Galactic Forces and controlled a military machine that spanned thousands of star systems. Human bases had been established at every strategic location in known space, and human patrols monitored all major trade routes. The old coalition military had been completely disbanded and replaced with human peacekeeping forces. The surviving alien races had learned to adapt to their new circumstances. Those species that had quickly surrendered and cooperated with human authorities found themselves protected and prosperous under the Terran hegemony. Their worlds were defended by human fleets, and their trade was protected by human law. But those races that had participated in the execution of human diplomats or had committed atrocities against human civilians found themselves living under much harsher conditions. Their worlds were occupied by human forces, and their governments were replaced with administrators chosen by Earth. These species would need to prove their trustworthiness over many generations before gaining full membership in the new order. The Talon Empire had been completely restructured, with human officials overseeing every aspect of their society. The proud warrior culture that had once dominated space was now reduced to serving as auxiliaries in the human military. Their natural aggression was channeled into protecting human interests rather than threatening them. The remnants of the Hive Collective had been scattered across dozens of worlds where they lived in small groups under constant human supervision. Their shared consciousness had been permanently damaged by human weapons, and they could no longer coordinate large-scale military operations. The once mighty collective had been reduced to individual drones, struggling to find meaning in isolation. Dr. Kong Yu had been appointed as Director of Galactic Technology Development and oversaw research projects that combined human innovation with knowledge gathered from conquered alien civilizations. The weapons that had won the war were now being converted into tools for exploration and construction as humanity began building an empire that would last for millennia. The galaxy's economy had been completely reorganized around human needs and preferences. Trade routes that had served coalition interests for centuries were replaced with new networks that brought resources to Earth and its colonies. Alien worlds that had once been wealthy centers of commerce found themselves reduced to suppliers of raw materials for human industry, but humanity had not forgotten the lessons learned during their rise to power. Every human child learned about Ambassador Park Su and the price of trusting alien promises. Military academies taught courses on the coalition war, emphasizing that eternal vigilance was the price of survival in a dangerous galaxy. Captain Ruesio commanded the honor guard that protected human diplomats during their missions to alien worlds. These elite soldiers were trained to ensure that no human ambassador would ever again face the fate that had befallen Park Su. Their presence was a constant reminder to alien populations of the consequences of harming Earth's